All right, ladies and gentlemen, I've got a special guest joining me today. Melissa McCurley is most notably known for bringing pickleball tournaments to the world of pickleball and making it a household name. She actually wasn't the original inventor of picklebaltournaments.com, and we'll get into that later during the interview, but she was known for basically getting that pickleballtournaments.com out there to the world of pickleball on a bigger scene. And we're going to find out the details of that and much, much more. Also, stick around towards the end of the interview as we are going to give away a free Temper Oculus XT paddle. And that'll be given away on a trivia question like I always like to do. Melissa was gracious enough to give me a trivia question to ask. And so I want to tell you guys a little bit about Melissa before I bring her on, because everybody kind of knows Melissa as the person who runs pickleballtournaments.com and makes tournaments a success. But what you may not realize about Melissa is that she's also a 5.0 pickleball player. And long before many of us even heard about pickleball, she was winning tournaments and winning matches over some big names in our sport. Some of these you may or may not recognize depending on when you got into the sport. But I just want to go through a couple of these wins that she's had. Sarah Ansberry, Steve Peranto, Mona Burnett, Larry Moon. She's beaten Cookie Drake, Yoda Friedenberg. She's also taken down Laura Fitton Covanda and Scott Stone, and a lot more names too. That's just a couple that she gave me. And the notable thing about all those wins is that happened in the same day at a tournament in 2015. It was at the LeMaster Davison Classic. Gigi LeMaster was a separate tournament. Many of those names that I mentioned have gone on to be national and U.S. champions. So she is a strong player, even though a lot of us these days don't get to see her play on the court. And the reason for that is because she turned her focus to pickleballtournaments.com to really thrive that business. And we're going to get into all the details of that. She also spent 8 years in the Navy. And then after she spent those 8 years, she got out and got into corporate America. And she spent 20 years in corporate America leading the infrastructure technology teams globally for American Express and EDS. And because I'm from Alabama and I'm a simpleton, I'm going to ask her what all that means. But that is a big deal in the corporate America world. And every time you swiped a credit card, she had something to do with the infrastructure of that. So without further ado, I am going to bring Melissa on with me. There she is, Melissa McCurley. What's up, girl?
Hey, Scott. How are you?
I'm doing great. That was a mouthful. You have a long list of wins over great players in this sport. I want to get into that first because you're noted and known for bringing pickleballtournaments.com into the sport as a household name. But before we get into all that, talk about your introduction to pickleball and just maybe even your life growing up in sports. We've done another interview prior to this, and we got into some of this. But for some people, they're seeing you for the first time. So kind of take us through that right there.
Yeah, well, growing up, my mom kept us involved in all kinds of sports. So we did it all from, I can remember tap dancing, baton twirling, soccer, softball, volleyball, basketball, track. I mean, violin even. I know that's not sport, but it was something that we also were involved in. So she put us in everything. And it was actually a Christmas, I want to say 2007, that a relative of ours brought a pickleball set to Christmas, because at Christmas we were always getting together as a competitive family and playing. It would always have a tournament, and it would be multiple things from throwing darts to ping pong to potato sack racing. And so she brought this pickleball set, and every year at Christmas, at my mom's in Texas, we would play pickleball in the driveway. And to be honest, I thought we were the only ones in the world who knew what pickleball was. And we had it, the shop lights out. We had it set up in the driveway, and we would just play for hours and hours and hours. So when I got transferred from Florida, I was working for EDS at the time, Electronic Data Systems. You mentioned that. That was a Ross Perot company. And anyhow, a company I would likely still be working for had Hewlett Packard not bought them in 2008. But anyhow, I was in now Phoenix, Arizona on a work transfer playing tennis. And one of the girls on my tennis team said something about her dad being a national pickleball champion. And I said, what? I said, run that by me again. Because again, I think we only know pickleball, right? At our driveway in Texas at Christmas. So she said, yeah, it's a big thing. They've got this big national tournament out in Buckeye, Arizona every November. You should check it out. I later learned her dad was Pat Kane, who is a legend, certainly in pickleball. And so I was living in North Central Phoenix. I drove out to Surprise, Arizona, which is where there's a row after row after row of 55 plus communities. And as I went out there to start checking it out, I couldn't believe what I saw. There were these real pickleball courts and they were fascinating to me. And there were people playing pickleball. And so I called my mom back home in Texas and I said, Mom, you're not going to believe this. I said, there's people playing pickleball out here, real courts. And so she and my stepdad flew out to Arizona. And I showed them around, and they checked it out, and I wanted them to come out and be closer to me. I hadn't lived close to my mom for 21 years at that point, and so they went home and put their home up for sale in Texas. And after living there like 40 years, and moved out to Arizona. So. And then it was actually I continued, to work for American Express. I was playing a little pickleball, but mostly tennis. And my mom got more involved in pickleball, and she had actually asked me to plan a tournament with her. And it was April of 2014. And I did. Mark Friedenberg was the tournament director. And she and I won silver that day. And now keep in mind, I was only playing because her normal partner, who a lot of people may know in Jan Yu, who's another top senior player, she and my mom used to win everything at the 4-0. And so when we got presented our medals that day, Mr. Friedenberg, as the tournament director, as he gave me the medal, he says, your mom usually wins gold.
Oh,
I know. Wow. What a low blow, huh?
Wow.
So that was April 2014. So some of her friends noticed that I could play pickleball pretty well. So they asked if I would come out to play with them on a Sunday for some play over at El Mirage, which for a long time was the home of the Grand Canyon State Games, which was one of the, it was really a premier tournament back several years ago where all the top level players would come to play. And so I went out there, and there was a lady there by the name of Jetty Lanius. She asked me what I was doing involved in pickleball. I gave her a little bit of information about that. And she mentioned that her and her husband had this software called pickleballtournaments.com. She knew I had an information technology background, as did my brother at the time. And so my brother and I discussed it. We decided to take a look at the tournament software. We evaluated it over about a 3-month period. And we made a decision at the end of our evaluation to buy pickleballtournaments.com. And so pickleball in both instances found me, if you will. It found me in my mom's driveway in East Texas, and then it found me again on a life impacting scale out in Arizona. So that's how that happened.
So I remember the first conversation that you and I had. You were telling me about that transaction with that husband and wife that started Pickleball Tournaments. But back then, were they wanting to kind of get out of the business and kind of sell, or did you just see an opportunity and go to them and say, we would love to be a part of what you're doing and maybe even buy you out? I mean, how did that kind of transpire?
No, like I said, Jetty Lanius, who is the wife of Bob Lanius, who's now a Pickleball Hall of Famer for his efforts in building pickleballtournaments.com. I mean, I just got to mention, if it's not for Mr. Lanius and what he builds over a 10-year period of time, there's none of us are playing national tournaments or US Open tournaments or regional tournaments. What he developed is unique in the entire world for any sport, and it allows us to run hundreds of matches in a matter of seconds. So no, as she approached me, I was happy as a corporate employee at American Express. I say happy, it was stressful, but I was doing very well in my corporate career. And so they had done it and built pickleballtournaments.com as a hobby. They always knew it was a hobby, but as it began to really grow, a hobby was turning into a business. And Mr. and Mrs. Lanius didn't want to have a business. And there were multiple people, I guess, in organizations that had approached them about buying their product. But I don't know exactly what it was. Miss Lannis will tell you she just really liked what she saw in me and this love that I seem to have for pickleball. And so that's why she asked me about it, if I would be interested. And then the conversations just went from there.
When that was going on back at that period of time, tell everybody what the landscape of pickleball was like back then. Did people travel all over the country like they do now for tournaments? Was there big money involved, or what? Tell everybody what it was like back then when you were evaluating that business, and did you see the future of pickleball at that time to where it could be today?
Yeah, well, no, there wasn't money tournaments. There was one in what Mr. John Gullo out of Utah had built in the Tournament of Champions. That was the first ever prize money tournament that started back in 2012. So in 2014, the people that were traveling, they were traveling like to the Grand Canyon State Games, to nationals. There were some tournaments in Oregon that people were traveling to, like Huntsman Games and the Fall Brawl in Utah. So kind of people were coming from east to come west to get competition, but there weren't pro tours, there weren't prize money. I mean, people were literally traveling for the competition. And at that time, tournaments were being run on pretty small venues, 8 courts venues. Wow. A 16-court venue was a really large. I mean, Grand Canyon State Games ran on a 16-court venue. And when we purchased the system, my brother and I, in 2014, there were 93 tournaments that were on the system. And, last year we ended at 748. And we expected, to continue that growth this year, but obviously a pandemic has sort of changed that.
Well, we're definitely going to talk about that and how that's changed things. But my next question, I've got a ton of questions, by the way, so I hope you've got a little time. But yeah. My next question is, what do you love the most about pickleball? What is it that's so addicting about this sport? Because it's not just pickleballtournaments.com that obviously got you into the sport. You were in love with the sport before that. So what is that? Talk about it for everybody watching.
Yeah, well, you'd asked if there was some kind of vision. So keep in mind, I'm doing really well in corporate America, and I was very blessed in the sense that I went to my boss and told him that I wanted to pursue this opportunity with pickleballtournaments.com. I could not have been prepared for his response, and his response to me was, I want you to be successful, and so why don't you stay on as a consultant to me in a part-time role, and I'll pay you your full-time salary. I was blown away, because without that, it would have been very difficult for me to, be able to put resources to growing a new pickleballtournament.com business. And so but I knew in my heart that it's what I was supposed to go do. It's what I was being called to go do. And so I went with that, and it instantly became something that was very rewarding and gave way back more to me than I have ever given to it, in the sense that I get to wake up every single day and help others be successful. And when you're in the business of serving others, there's nothing more rewarding. And pickleball is full of servants, if you will. Great people, the social aspect of the game, the genuineness of the people associated with the game, just kind of makes it a game with a huge, huge heart, if you will. And it's a game of people that genuinely care for others. So, just that opportunity to be a part of that type of community is what just keeps me motivated and going every single day.
Oh, that's awesome. And the growth that you mentioned from 93 tournaments when you bought the software to 748, I think you mentioned, something like that. So upwards of 700. I mean, that is astonishing growth. How did you grow with those numbers, and what did you do from an infrastructure standpoint to make sure that you could handle that growth properly and not get fall behind on that?
Yeah, so we started as a 2-person team with my brother and I, and we were growing fast, and we were spending so much time traveling around the country, operationally helping tournaments and tournament directors be successful, and also building our brand, our business, our reputation, and it was growing at a speed that was just very difficult to keep up with. And so I had private investors. other companies. I had multiple people approaching me in the year 2017 wanting to acquire pickleballtournaments.com. But it was Mr. Lanius and Mrs. Lanius and what they built, and certainly our desire to continue to make them proud. We just knew we weren't just going to hand over the reins to anybody for pickleballtournaments.com. And so Pickleball Central actually approached us as one of the folks that were interested in acquiring pickleballtournaments.com. And as soon as they did, I knew that they were the company that were the best partners for pickleballtournaments.com. Because they had the same core values and the sense of customer service that we had at pickleballtournaments.com. So in February of 2018, Pickleball Central acquired pickleballtournaments.com. My brother stayed on with us for another year to help in that transition. And I took all of my interest in pickleballtournaments.com and put them into Pickleball Central. And now I'm one of 5 owners and of the company responsible for the pickleballtournaments.com division to continue to grow that. And so by combining resources and going through that acquisition, it allowed us to grow our team, add more staff members, add developers, grow the software. In July of last year, we launched an entire new website redesign that was designed to make it more mobile friendly and more user friendly for people registering for tournaments. We also moved to an Amazon web hosted infrastructure that allowed us to be able to grow for the demands that people have on using the system. So and we're also doing some other things to grow in the why we're in this downtime, if you will, as well. Why there's not 20 tournaments every weekend that are running.
Well, that leads me to my next question, because you are a woman who likes to go. It seems like I don't get to spend time with you on a personal level a lot of times, but I do see your schedule, and you're always in a different state, in a different city every weekend during the peak of the season during pickleball. But all of a sudden, mid-March hits of 2020, and things just come to a grinding halt for your business, and for a lot of people. What have you done to? Obviously, you touched on just a little bit of what you're doing in the downtime, but how big of a change was that, going from 90 miles an hour to basically 0?
Yeah, and I was at Texas A&M University running the USAPA Mid-South Regional. When the call came in, we just finished the first day of that tournament. It was a 4-day tournament. That Thursday, about 5 o'clock, the university shut the tournament down. And on that Friday the 13th, I was on an airplane back to Hilton Head. And that was the second in 4 more tournaments that I had back to back, behind that. And at first, maybe like a lot of people, I was confused, angry, frustrated. I was like, what, a lot of things. And so after a couple of weeks of that, I knew I had to gather myself together and sort of learn what we needed to do going forward in a new world. And that's what it is for us, a new world. And so how do we continue to move things forward? And we're fortunate enough, some people may not think about this, but, we're a very small IT business, and IT businesses are not cheap to operate. And I'm fortunate to work with some very smart colleagues at Pickleball Central who made sure that we were in a position to survive for our pickleball tournament family and community. So I turned my thoughts to, okay, what can we do? Certainly, we were consulting with tournament directors, helping them through their own decisions around cancellations and postponements and things like that. And once that kind of settled and got into a rhythm, then I thought, well, what's another opportunity to give back to the tournament world? And because we've been so busy, literally, 16, 18 hours a day, gone half the year at events. There's little time to share the knowledge that we've communicated over time or gathered over time, right? Mm-hmm. And so I thought, wow, here's a real opportunity to set up knowledge share sessions with people that are tournament organizers or interested in being tournament organizers, all around the world. And so in April, we kicked off a series of knowledge share sessions, helping people learn how to plan for tournaments. and manage registrations and prepare for tournaments, and then actually run those tournaments on site. We had 51 participants from around the world participate in those knowledge share sessions, and they were very, very well received. I had people that weren't able to get in who were on wait lists, now new people that are wanting to come in that have heard about it. And so I'm going to run another session again starting in June. And so we'll be pushing out some information about that and how to get involved for people who are interested. So then in addition, something else we had been working on for quite some time, but again, had little time to devote to it, was actually putting on an online certification program to allow people to become certified to manage registrations and run tournament desk operations. So we partnered with the Professional Pickleball Registry, the PPR, to bring that type of certification course to the community. And we launched it on May 7th. We already have 50 people that have signed up for the course. Our first certified person was Scott Schreier out of Minnesota. We were very proud of Scott. And then Larry and Julie Scott are the first certified referees to also now get their registration and tournament management certification. So
wow,
exciting stuff that we've been able to do.
Man, that's incredible. And it just makes sense, right, Melissa? Because as the growth of pickleball has happened, there's been a lot of moving parts, and you have to evolve just like anybody else. And we've seen from the officiating and referee standpoint, they're getting organized, starting to certified level 1 and level 2 referees. Then you've got the players have evolved, right? The play at the pro levels evolved. Money starting to get put into the sport. So as a infrastructure for you guys, that's important, I think, for you guys to continue to not be to be on the cutting edge of stuff and not just stay stagnant. So that's impressive that you guys are staying on top of that. Obviously, there's a big demand, and I think that's going to only get bigger.
Yeah, and with the referees community, I think about this often. I live in Hilton Head, South Carolina now, but I moved here a year and a half ago. Prior to that, I was 10 years in Arizona and running all of the events that we're running in Surprise for the most part. And I was able to watch the entire referee certification program, referee coordination program, just develop and evolve right in front of my eyes as I just was back behind the scenes, moving score sheets. And to see, and it was Lynn and Linda Lehman who put the first, training program together for referees certification and also referee coordinators. And they got started, and then I just watched, one referee after another come through the program and get certified, and people coming in from around the country to be evaluated to receive their certification. So the work that the referee team has done, and it continues. And, now you got Mark Pfeiffer who's in charge, and now we've got these, regional training centers, and they continue just to improve the quality of the training, which improves the quality of the referees that are on the court, which improves the quality of the tournament and the experience for the players. So it's amazing. So kudos to that entire group of people for what they've developed over the past few years.
Absolutely. And that is one important aspect of our growth with pickleball, especially on the pro side of things, making sure that the referees and all that is catching up and getting on the same page as the pro players evolve. So I just think all of this working together, it's important for the growth. And that leads me to my next question. You and I have had this conversation off camera a couple of times. What all goes into running a tournament, especially because you were the first one? I know this from talking to you and also just from watching, the first person to run an 800, 1200, 2100, and I think US Open this last time had maybe 27 or 2800. I mean, how much goes into that behind the scenes? Like, let's go US Open to US Open or nationals to nationals. How long of an investment for you, and how many months in advance do you start preparing for these big tournaments?
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll start, conversations from planning for those big events a year out in advance. I've had the opportunity and to be a part of the U.S. Open since it started, but a year prior to the tournament ever going on, I was consulting on that with the U.S. Open. And so it can, anywhere from 6 months to a year, you're putting in work. And then, I tell people that it's all in the planning and preparation. If you don't plan, you don't prepare, you're going to have chaos. You can guarantee that. So you want to make sure that you've got, you're planning, you're preparing, you have the right teams in place that can help large events be successful. And you've got to be organized. And one of the most important things that you have to have are processes and people that can execute those processes. And so, I had the opportunity to take processes and procedures that had been defined, or in the early years by the USAPA and Mr. Lanius, and then be able to test them and stress them and fine tune them before some of these large tournaments came to be. And then what I learned is that the processes were sound, and those processes, as long as you executed them and followed them properly, it didn't matter if you were running a 4-court tournament with 100 players or what we were going to do this year in 60 courts at the US Open with some 2,500 players. The processes are scalable. And so you just need more people to execute them. And so I guess really, Scott, the easiest question or way to answer it is all in the planning and preparation and the people and the processes, and then the organization that you put around those things to execute the event on event day. I often tell people that once you get to the tournament site itself, it's showtime. And that's when it's easy. It's all of the work that you had to do to get there. That's really where the blood, sweat, and tears comes in.
Oh, I love that insight. And I know you remember this story, but do you remember, I've had some personal experience with you as far as your infrastructure and your structure and organization with these tournaments, because I had a partner drop out or something happened for the Texas Open, or it was the Atlanta Open maybe. And I was trying to get Shelton Baptiste Webster, the unicorn, which is a mouthful, on the registration. That's a mouthful to find too on there. But I remember just being a little frustrated because I was going to you and I was saying, I just want Shelton as my partner. I don't know how we can get this done, but I want it to happen. And you said, these are the things that we have to do in order. And if all of those things happen and it lines up, then yes, you can have him as your partner, but we have to go through these processes. And I'll just tell you from a very transparent standpoint, as a player, I was just frustrated because I was like, Melissa, how come we can't just add him on the list and it's done? And I want you to talk about that, because that conversation between you and I really helped open my eyes to why you have been successful as a tournament director, or not even the tournament director, but just running those tournaments as a process. Because the reason I'm bringing this up is I think people sometimes, like myself, we get tunnel vision and we don't realize that there's a bigger picture in play and that there's other people that you have to consider. So talk about that and why that is important to explain to players that just want it done right then and there, but you have to.
Well, so one thing that's important. So, I am not a tournament director. I'm a tournament operator that supports tournament directors. And so, and I help them establish policies and procedures for their particular tournaments that we need to put in place to make sure that we can consistently and fairly manage situations, whatever those situations may be, and allow us to do so consistently. And players have all kinds of different experiences. I mean, they could be going to a local tournament that has 100 people, and the tournament director wanted another 100, so they're literally signing up people as you walk up, right? When we're managing these large events, 700, 800, 2,200, that's a lot of players, and so we don't have the luxury of just doing those walk-up sign-ups and that type of thing. So we have to have that structure. We have to have the policies. We have to have the procedures. We have to have the consistency to be able to handle each player fairly. And in turn, that builds a brand, a reputation of integrity and consistency for that tournament director, who's also, has a brand that's important to them, especially as more and more tournaments are out there, and those tournaments it becomes very competitive, because which tournament is someone going to choose? And so if somebody knows that it doesn't matter who they are, they're going to go through the same process as everybody else, and they're going to be treated consistently and fairly, and not, it wasn't who or what favor you could get. That builds, confidence of a player into a tournament. I mean, even, people ask my mom, they're like, oh, you're getting special favors. And she goes, I can assure you, I am not. She goes, I get none. We used to laugh about the US Open because when it first started, they had these courts called the Avalon. They were these temporary courts on basketball. Or temporary nets on basketball courts, right? She got stuck down there 2 years in a row. And, it's like, that's just how it goes. It's just another, player in the tournament. Now, there are situations, and I explain this to tournament directors up front, especially as more pro players have come in, more sponsored players have come in, and people are paying a lot of money to sponsor tournaments. And so those then may have players that they want to have guaranteed spots coming into an event and that sort. And so I have helped guide and coach tournament directors based on experience on how to perhaps set up pre-registration opportunities for people that need to have guaranteed spots into the tournament. But once they're in any type of situation that requires a replacement, like in your case, is typically this on a large tournament. To get a replacement player, the player needs to already be registered in the tournament, able to play in your same skill or age level. And if those things are not possible with the people who are entered into the tournament, then a new registration can come in to be that replacement. Depending on the timeliness of that, especially when you start to get up at the higher levels and pro levels, the timeliness of those changes could in fact impact the seeding of those brackets. And seedings of brackets are critical, right? And so prior to the USAPA having UTPRs, seeding committees would meet for weeks at a time preparing for a tournament, doing individual and independent research. Now the UTPRs have helped reduce the amount of effort and time that is spent. But you still have people that are responsible as a seeding committee, if you will, to review and verify and validate those seeds for bracket play. And so very late changes can be quite problematic, especially if it impacts the seeding of a bracket. So those are things that people just certainly may not think of just coming to the tournament as a player, right? They just want to play. Absolutely. And that's why I brought that whole thing up, because it was the first time that I spoke to you and you said, Scott, listen, I want to help. Trust me. I want you to be able to have a partner in play, but we have to go through these processes first, because that's the fair thing. And this is funny, Melissa, and I've had partners say, well, you're the golden boy. Can't you just make a phone call? I'm like, what? No, Melissa does not operate like that. And so, but I bring that up because at the end of the day, we went through those processes. It took a little time. We exhausted every option. And the end result was that I did end up getting to play with Shelton, but not before we satisfied all those previous options that were available. So there was a good ending to the story, but I think it was so important for me to bring that up so that you could explain how that works, and not just from a player standpoint, but from a bigger picture standpoint, right? Well, and why those types of policies are in place, right? It's not for people like yourself or others to feel like, oh, they're just trying to give me a hard time, right? It's not about that. They're documented, published, and right. Policies that people should read and become familiar with, because every tournament may have different policies, right? Because not every tournament is one size fits all. Not every tournament director is one size fits all. But what I always encourage tournament directors to have is to have a policy, whatever it is, but have one so that you and then conform to it. Execute to it consistently, because as soon as you have things out there that you're not actually adhering to, then that impacts the integrity and reputation of your tournament.
Absolutely.
So, and it's a dialogue and a collaboration. These are types of consults that I'll have with tournament directors before taking on a position and a role with them. And I will ask them what are their policies, what are their procedures. If they don't have any, I'll make recommendations. If they have them, then we will execute to them. To whatever those policies might be. So, and that's worked out very, very well, and it's proven to be very successful. And you can see a ton of tournaments out there that are considered some of the highest quality tournaments with good character and integrity around the country.
Absolutely. That leads me to the next question, which is obviously right now COVID-19 has kind of slowed everything down, but we're starting to slowly see things coming out of that. I have seen a tournament as soon as June, looks like starting to promote that they're going to have the tournament in mid-June. Is that what you're seeing as well? Are tournaments starting to slowly kind of come out of the shell here, and we're going to start seeing some in June?
No, it's funny. I think it was Stacy, the Pickler, who put out a question. When do you think you'll see tournaments return? And I think people thought I was being funny. I just responded, put June 3rd, And I think people thought I was being funny when I responded, but I wasn't, because I knew I was taking a risk by putting that date there, because I knew it was going to be a couple days later before I had the official answer. But Utah and the Southern Utah Shootout that was postponed from March until June got the go-ahead to run their tournament. There's close to 400 players in the tournament, but it's coming with certain restrictions and certain precautions that they're going to have to take.
Can you talk about that?
Well, I mean, there's like, four people on a court at a time, only being at the venue if you're scheduled to play. Temperature checks, sanitizing balls, wearing masks when interacting with volunteers, and basically wearing a mask whenever you're not on the court, limiting our spectators not being able to come in. Those are the types of things. And those things are going to be different from state to state. So Utah is the first state that we're seeing tournaments come back into, running in June. Also, the Eric Schutte tournament is going to be running up in Brigham City in June as well. And so this coming week, of the third week of every month, we're reaching out to different tournaments to find out what their status is for running that next month. And so there's still some that are in an undecided mode at this point on whether or not they're going to be able to run. They're just the same thing. They're waiting. Hey, maybe next week we get to go into another phase, right? And then we might be able to open up our tournament. The PPA just announced last week that they're going to be able to resume their tour, their professional tour, in Newport Beach, California in August. And the Tournament of Champions in Utah is also expected to go on in August. Then you have the APP Tour, who just announced last week that they're going to kind of get back into pickleball with two pro exhibition events, one here in Hilton Head on July the 25th. And then another one out in Bend, Oregon on August the 2nd. And so those will be good events to kind of, get excited and be able to, in a responsible fashion, get people, back onto the courts competing.
So if I heard you correctly, you said maybe only be at the venue when you're scheduled to play. Does that mean maybe no fans right now? No people just sitting around in lawn chairs? Is that kind of how I'm picturing that?
Right. Yeah. So, and for our sport, that's not predominantly a spectator sport today. It's mostly, players that are watching other matches. But yeah, that's what I think we can expect to see for now. It's the people will be there just to play.
Very interesting. I'm just excited to see that some people are willing to kind of put their tournament out there and be the guinea pig, if you will, for the first tournament back. I think there was a little while, and it's expected, but I thought there was a little while where nobody was going to pull the trigger and be that first tournament to kind of come back on scene. But I think with some of those precautions in place and everybody being responsible, I think it can be a success. And I think after that first one, we're going to see more and more tournaments maybe start to come back on the scene. I'm just curious to see if it has a positive impact on our sport, or if it maybe sets us back a little bit after the first couple. But it's to be known still. We still don't know what the future is with this.
Well, and then how are we classified, right, as a sporting event? I mean, because we're not really on the professional stage like baseball or football or basketball or that type of thing. We're still kind of a recreational sport. And so I think that'll give us some more flexibility. And looking at the guidelines as Parks and Recs and open up different places around the country. And so I think that if we're all responsible to follow the guidelines and be as safe and put all those precautions in place we can, I think we'll be fine. And the thing is, for people who don't feel safe or wouldn't feel safe, then they don't have to put themselves in the situation of coming back to competition yet. And there'll be people who make those decisions. It was interesting as we were doing some of the consults with tournament directors that we're going to be opening up registrations in May for tournaments going in August and September. They're like, Melissa, what should we do? And I'm like, I would open up the registration. And just to see what kind of response that you get, knowing that by those outer months, the country is expected to be open, and perhaps, we're already seeing people return to pickleball. Perhaps tournaments will be okay. But if not, make sure you have policies in place that protect the people who sign up. They'll get their refunds back and, things like that. And when registrations opened up, the Mid-Atlantic Regional in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, for the USAPA, they opened up. Within just 2 or 3 days, they had 400 people register. And then I went into the tournament just to see the demographics of the ages of people who were signing up. And, the majority of the people signing up were over 60, just as we always see. But then again, we had a registration open up in Arizona in May as well, that happens in August, and those signups were a little slower. So it'll be a mixed bag.
Very interesting information and insight into that. I think we're on the upswing. Now, I'm not going to claim to know all the details of the situation going on, but I'm starting to see like some trends where there was a time where if you even posted live pickleball recreationally, people were just clobbering everybody on there. Now we're starting to see some people posting some, and nobody's really freaking out too bad about it. So I think we're moving on the back end of it to where hopefully our sport can kind of resume somewhat of normalcy. Obviously, things are going to be different. But guys, listen, Melissa's given everybody great insight. Make your own decision, right? Don't be negative towards a tournament director because they're willing to put a tournament out there. If you don't feel safe and comfortable yet, just don't be a part of it yet. Make sure you sign up when you're ready and comfortable. But there will be people who love this sport enough to take those precautions and still play in the tournament. And I think we're seeing that. I saw a tournament that is in Virginia. It's the mid-June, and there's already 240 people signed up. So, we're going to see over the next few months what happens with the landscape of this, which also leads into my next question that I've got for you, which you touched on, the APP and the PPA tour. A couple years ago, we saw the Professional Pickleball Federation, the PPF, infuse money into the pro side of the sport. In my opinion, I don't know all the backstory on that and why it only lasted a year, but for one reason or another, it didn't continue at that time. Maybe it was a little too early in the sport. I'm not sure. Maybe you have some insight. But with the inception of the APP and the PPA Pro Tours, where do you see the sport headed over the next couple of years?
Yeah, well, the PPF was certainly ahead of its time, and so started to lay the groundwork and the foundation for pro tours to come on, like we see in the APP and the PPA. So I think where those sports, start, or where those organizations start to lead us is more visibility to the sport, more professional level athletes coming into the sport, and hopefully more money that will come into the sport through more sponsorships, maybe even bigger sponsors with bigger names, more in number that are coming in, that continue to give us an opportunity to put the sport on a national stage. And certainly the avenue to do that through professional play. I mean, it's very exciting to watch the professional players. As more money gets infused into the sport, then you'll have more professional players that come in who perhaps have an opportunity to make a living playing, as opposed to, not only having to play, but having to teach, having to tour, all those things that, you as an athlete, you already have a grind on you about, right? Just to prepare yourself as an athlete to play the game. And now to also have to, be all around the country or, out on a court for hours and hours a day to be able to make a living and make ends meet. I can only imagine the strain that puts on an athlete trying to get ready for competition physically and mentally. But, I think these organizations are going to help elevate the sport to gain more national attention, bring in more players, ultimately getting more exposure, and just continuing to elevate us and elevate us.
Oh, that's awesome. And I recently heard Tyson McGuffin on an interview say that last year he did over 40 clinics throughout the year in 2019, on top of being a top competitor in pro singles, doubles, and mixed doubles. So I think one of the coolest parts of the growth as it's happening and unfolding in front of us with the APP and the PPA tours is that it may give a guy like Tyson the opportunity to not do quite as many clinics to support his family and make a living. And that to me is one of the best parts about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where hopefully we'll all see it go, so that those athletes can focus on being athletes and competing.
I love it. The next question is a great question, I feel like, and I think it gets tossed around a lot on the Pickleball Forum and other forums. Do you think the sport of pickleball will ever make it into the Olympics? Yes or no? And if yes, how, why, when? All those good questions.
Well, I mean, the answer obviously yes. I do think it's going to make it into the Olympics, and this is a worldwide sport that continues to grow internationally. You got the International Pickleball Federation, who is doing a great job in organizing and leading pickleball internationally. And so, with the popularity and the explosion and the growth, and how pickleball is doing the right things, if you will, to become a legitimate sport. I think there's no doubt that at some point it will be in the Olympics. When? All I can say is I would expect it hopefully to be in my lifetime. And those who know how old I am, at least by the time I'm 90. How's that?
I love it. You guys heard it from Melissa first. At least by 90 years old, she wants to see it. I love that. I love that. And I think that's great insight. I would love to see the sport go to that level where I think our sport, because I think the name is phenomenal. I think it's a great conversation piece. I've been on many planes, honestly, where I was able to trap two people who didn't know about pickleball for at least an hour and introduce them to pickleball, where they couldn't really go anywhere unless they went to the restroom real quick. But I think it would bring some credibility to our sport if it became an Olympic sport. Not that it doesn't have traction already. I think we're starting to see some interesting dynamics. Did you see Ellen DeGeneres talk about pickleball recently on her show?
Yeah, well, I saw that Stephanie Lane, who had put out a clip on Facebook, so I watched it. I mean, I was like, holy cow, she goes, went on for quite some time about it, and how it was giving her some lower back pain, and how unless you played, you wouldn't understand what she meant, and things like that. So there's a lot of celebrities out there that are playing pickleball. They're doing it for fun. I don't know how much they actually know what's happening, in growing pickleball as a professional sport. But as more recognition comes and pickleball gets more national exposure, maybe they'll be sitting on their couch and go, holy cow, I had no idea that was going on with the game that I love and play out there. And maybe some of them will get more involved.
Absolutely. Just off the top of my head, I can Bush, a former president, him and his family play recreationally. The Kardashians had a video that was out that they played, although it didn't look much like pickleball. But one of the Kardashians, which I don't keep up with them, but she just posted something about the new multi-million-dollar home that she built from scratch, and she built a private pickleball court at her home. That was also posted. Then you've got Kid Rock. Kid Rock plays. Hank Haney, which was a professional golfer and I think instructor to Tiger Woods. He plays. John Isner is a professional tennis player, the top top 15 player that played at the Texas Open and plays with Hank Haney. Then you've got, like I said, Ellen DeGeneres. I mean, the list goes on and on. So it seems like it's picking up some traction. Also, this brings me to my next point, which ESPN3 we had a segment from Nationals in 2018 in November. And then also recently, Kyle Yates, Adam Stone, Ben Johns, and Deckel Barr did a little ESPN segment where they played singles. Do you ever think that our sport might get televised on national television? Not just maybe a spot here or there, but do you think it can ever become kind of a mainstream sport? Or do you think it's better that our sport stays kind of on a rec level?
Yeah, I think it will get national exposure as a sport, and how long that's going to take. I mean, it's reasonable with the light speed in which pickleball is growing. That is something that could happen within the next couple of years. Now, in what form that national exposure comes is yet to be seen. I don't know that it's necessarily going to be like when you flip on and, watch a golf tournament or watch a baseball game or watch a football game. It may not be like that within the next couple of years, but I think more national exposure through television, through the efforts of people like Chris Evon and Terry Graham and the folks at Indian Wells and the USAPA through the Nationals, their efforts to get more national exposure to the game, I think is going to get us there. And so you hear it first here, Scott. I think that could happen within the next couple of years. Again, what form it takes, I don't know, but I do think pickleball will have some kind of national stage.
Absolutely. And we're just seeing more and more trending of pickleball on the news. It seems like news stations are picking it up more and more and talking about it. It's funny, though. They always seem to chuckle a little when they say the name pickleball. And I want to get your perspective on our name of the sport that we love. I personally love it, but I want to hear when you bring up pickleball to somebody new that's never heard of it, do you get a little bit of a chuckle or like, pickleball, what the heck is that? Do you play with pickles? Like, I get that a lot.
Yeah.
But talk about that and how that is beneficial to our sport or not.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't get that kind of reaction. I mean, I did have something funny happen when I was still at American Express, and one of my teammates that was over in Brighton in the UK working, I told him what I was going to be going on to do with pickleball. He comes back to me later. He says he was really concerned because he thought I said tickleball. And he Googled tickleball, and undoubtedly some very inappropriate stuff came up. So that's the only, a little awkward story that I have around the name. But when people get it right, it's just pickleball, I've had, pretty normal reactions. People just want to know, oh, well, what is that? And when you explain it to them, a lot of them, oh, hey, I want to check that out. That sounds like fun. But it's an interesting question. And I've always thought, well, okay. And I've had, several times to think about this. What would I name it? What would I change the name to? And I can't ever come up with anything that is really unique that would identify with the sport that we have today. And so I know some people might think it's a funny, what do you hear, funny game with a funny name or, that type of thing. But I don't find the name funny, and I find it appropriate for the history of the game and how it uniquely identifies the game with the world. So I don't know what I'd change it to. Do you know what you change it to?
I've thought about it 1,000 times in the 3.5 years I've played, and I always go back to pickleball, and it just, nothing else really makes sense to me. And I know for you and I and some people that have been around the sport for a while, we all know the name and how that came about. But for anybody new that's maybe watching this interview for the first time, do you know the two stories that are predominant for how that name came about?
Well, yes, I do. But let me make this statement too. I think too, it's kind of the way that we represent our game in pickleball. And because, I personally am not fond of representing the game with pickles or, animated characters or things like that. I think that could detract from the image of the game. And so anyhow, I'll just put that out there. But as far as the name of the game, yes, I know one of them is around being named after a dog named Pickles, who was always chasing the pickleball. And I had the opportunity to talk with the son, his name's David, Barney McCollum, at Nationals 2 or 3 years ago, and asked him, I said, well, there's this question about, was it named after, the dog Pickles, or was it named after, a boat crew that's kind of the leftovers, if you will, of a rowing crew that becomes a pickle boat, and it's called pickleball that way. And so I asked him, and David said, and if you called him up today, he'd be like, I'm denying this story because I talked to him about it, afterwards. And he said he was there the night that they named it pickleball, and he showed me the picture of the 2 Cocker Spaniels, the black dogs, the 2 pictures of them and the owners. And he said it's absolutely named after the dog Pickles. So I see him the next year. It was because it was one at the Hall of Fame, and there was someone there speaking on behalf of the family for the Hall of Fame acceptance. And so I pulled it, and they told the pickleball story as far as how it was named after pickleball. So I pulled David to the side. I said, hey, that's not what we talked about. And he's like, I can neither confirm nor deny. He's like, I'm like, you just don't want to start a family dispute.
I love it.
So for me, it will always be about the dogs.
So the version I heard initially was about the dogs. And then I heard, well, that's just what the media picked up on back then. And it was an easier story to promote the dog Pickles than it was to explain to people about rowing and the pickle boat and all that, which granted, it is a lot easier to say, hey, it's named after a dog that used to chase the pickleball around. But I think that's fantastic that you got some inside information, because that's always been something that was really not known 100%. It's like, was it named after the pickle boats, or was it named after the dog? And I'm with you. I'm glad it was named after the dog. Just a lot easier to tell people that way too.
Well, it makes sense, right? It does. It makes sense. So
yeah. Well, I've never been somebody that was I never rowed anything. I've never, except for maybe one of those little canoes or whatever. So it's hard for me to explain that other version to people anyway. So, but anyway, I think that's a neat story, and I didn't actually know that you knew some inside information there. So that worked out good.
It was just a happenstance, chance to have that opportunity to chat with David that particular night. I think it was an ambassador dinner or something, and he happened to have a picture with him. So I thought, holy cow, a pretty important moment has just occurred here.
That's incredible. I love it. And actually, for anybody that doesn't know, I think Barney McCollum was at Nationals this past year or the year before. I can't remember if it was 2018 or 2019, but he then celebrated, I think, his 93rd birthday before he finally passed away. So he had a long and enriched life here on Earth. I mean, he was in his 90s before he finally passed. And I believe he was. Do you remember if it was at this last one or the one before?
The one before.
So it's 2018 in November. I saw him. I never got to speak with him, but did you get a chance to speak with Barney at the tournament?
Not at the tournament, but I used to do this pickleball radio show with Chris Allen when he used to have that. And we had Barney on for the 100th episode of the pickleball show. And he was just so funny. And what I can remember the most is Chris asked him a question about the controversy around the different type of balls to play with, and how some players really complained if they had to play with, ball A versus ball B. And his comment was, that's just like, telling a competitive snow skier that they can pick what snowflakes they're going to ski on. And and that's always stuck with me. And so it was a lot of fun to have that radio conversation with Barney and let him tell his story, because he also told the story during that interview about when they were marketing pickleball. Right. And talked about how the marketing around it, back then in the late 60s when they took it down to California, was they marketed the game as get off the sidelines of life. And I thought that was a very interesting marketing approach, and still true today, right? How many people are getting off the sidelines of life and getting off their couches to come play pickleball? You hear, and who have never played a sport before, who were depressed or suicidal or had lost a spouse, and their health was at risk. And how many stories do we hear that pickleball, they'll say, has saved my life? It was a life-changing, life-impacting sport. And I think it all started with that marketing campaign and slogan that, most of us don't know anything about.
Oh, that is so amazing. And you're so spot on. I mean, we have heard so many stories of people. I mean, there's some stories of people who have lost. I know of one couple in Indiana. They've lost over 220 pounds between the two of them. Just simply, I mean, there's a lot more to it, but playing pickleball and eating right and and getting their workout through pickleball. So I think it has truly saved a lot of lives. And that sounds dramatic, but I think what we're really saying is, if you tried to, I've played tennis for the last week or so, just for the first time.
How's that going?
Oh, Melissa, it's horribly discouraging to try to play tennis and be decent at it. And I'm a competitor, so I hate not being good at something. And I am awful at tennis. But with pickleball, I had the exact opposite feel. I picked up the paddle for the first time and I hit the pickleball. And within an hour, I was hooked. I was like, I think I could be pretty good at this, or I think I could be decent. Little did I know there was guys on the scene like Kyle Yates and Ben Johns and Tyson McGuffin and so on and so forth. But in my head, I was like, wow, I think I could be pretty good. And I think that's the allure of pickleball. And that combined with the social aspect of pickleball versus any other sport is that where else have you, and tell me honestly, where else have you experienced where you can go be a part of some big family like this of pickleball, and when you get done with a tournament competing against these other athletes, you all go out to dinner and have a great time and cut up and laugh and just enjoy such a good time. And I know you do that. I personally have seen you spend time with the players and the tournament directors after a tournament. So talk about that and why it's so enticing.
Well, if I get a chance, I usually come into an event at least a day, sometimes 2 days before, and just to get prepared and set up. So, but once we get onto the tournament sites, we're there 14, 16 hours a day, and then we're, preparing for the next day. So we don't get as much chance to socialize as we would like to from, a tournament organization and perspective. But when I do have the opportunities, it's really neat to go out and see at the restaurants. You got your paddle tech teams or your Onyx teams or your head teams, and and then sometimes when they're having those events at the same restaurant, then they'll intermingle and that sort and laugh with each other. But for me, Scott, usually I'm having to live vicariously in those situations and just watch people's Facebook posts, with all these group dinners, after they finish playing, because even if you win your event, you might be done by 3 p.m., right? I ain't checking out of that place till 9 p.m. So I'm looking for your Facebook post to see how good dinner was. But you're right. It is like that. Even, the sportsmanship in a game, after the game, people are tapping paddles and, sharing the love, if you will, as Dave Weinbach would say. And and then going out, and whether it's going out to dinner or going back to a host home and playing games, with each other. You see pickleball team or pickleball people going on hikes, if they're traveling to different tournaments and they want to see the area, razor rides, escape rooms, things like that. It's really neat to see the camaraderie as people come together who are coming from multiple states at a tournament that are socializing just outside of the event too. And then that is certainly an aspect that makes pickleball special.
Absolutely. And I said this I did an international Zoom call with Gene Click and a big group of pickleball players all across the world last Saturday. And I've always said this since day one. The sport of pickleball literally is addicting because it's the sound of the ball hitting the paddle and just the uniqueness of the rules. That is what brings you in to play pickleball. But it's the people that keep you coming back to tournament after tournament after tournament. And that's what really hooked me. And that's why I've played almost 100 tournaments in 3.5 years, is because,
oh, goodness.
Yeah, I have literally just become addicted to that feeling of being at a tournament and getting to see all your buddies that you maybe haven't caught up with for a few months or what have you. And so what is so special about these tournaments? Is it exactly that? It's just like when I look forward to the excitement of seeing everybody at Nationals and US Open, is that the same way for you, even though you're kind of behind the scenes somewhat with running the tournament? Don't you try to it seems like you try to get out and get pictures with people and that kind of thing when you have an opportunity.
Yeah, oh yeah, I love getting able to get out and see people, and certainly things like Nationals and the U.S. Open are, as a professional tournament operator, right? I'm a professional tournament operator. It's much like those events are huge for me, just like they would be for a pro player coming to compete. Those are my Super Bowls, and the bigger the better for me, and so I love to get there. I love to see the people. I love to see the volunteers. I love to see the other staff members because we're there in like a reunion every year coming together to put on these big events that people are just literally so excited about. And there are people that I'll get a chance to meet who we were interacting with through the registration phases that are coming from Aruba or from Spain or from London or Canada or, coming from Arkansas, wherever. And, I always say, please, if you get a chance, come by and say hello. Sometimes people are met with, the security guards at the door. But if I know that people are there and I can break away, I love to get out and about and just feel the energy because, and this from being at those events like the Open and like Nationals, the electricity around those is just off the charts. I mean, the excitement, people are genuinely excited. And I think that's another neat thing about being at pickleball tournaments. People are there having fun. And they're genuinely excited to be there. Some of them, they're fine being 2 and out. They're there with their friends, socializing, watching other matches. And then there's others that the tournaments feed a competitive fire, right? Those tournaments are fuel for them that are feeding this competitive fire and this need that can only be filled at a tournament. I'm one of those people, by the way. I mean, you see me out for rec play, you're like, that girl is not no 3-0. I mean, not no 5-0. She's a 3-0. I mean, that's what I look like out there, right? But you put me in tournament mode, you better look out. I'm ready to, get out there and play.
I love that. And that was another question I wanted to ask you was, when was the last time you did play a tournament? I think I saw in January of 2020. Is that right?
I did, yeah. So I went out in January and I was going to Arizona to run the Southwest Regional, and there was I was eligible to play seniors this year. I turned 50 in April, so January 1st I could play. So Augie Augsburger, who's a fantastic player, asked if I would play on that Monday leading into the tournament I'd be working, and so I agreed because my thought was if I could get more time to get on the court, I'd love to start competing again now that I'm in the senior bracket. But what I found was that the pressure and the stress that I was putting on myself to find time to go to the court to get ready was just too much because I just did not have time to prepare the way I needed to be prepared to compete in a tournament. Now, Augie and I went 3-2 that day. And it certainly, if I could have been a little bit better, he was certainly awesome all day long. Perhaps we do a little bit better than that. But I just, unless I can find a way to get more court time, I think my competing days, on any kind of regular basis are just,
May they rest in peace.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, honestly, you are very crucial to our sport. And so as much as I would love to see you compete still, I love that you are growing and putting your focus into growing pickleballtournaments.com. And I think that you saw a vision back then when you bought Pickleball Tournaments. You had to have seen hopefully a vision of where the sport could be headed. And I think we're in a very crucial time right now, a very pivotal time in our sport. And that brings me to my next question. This question I think is just crazy because I don't even believe I'm saying this, but it says, with the rise of 13-year-old Annalie Waters, how important is that for the future continued growth of pickleball? I can't believe I'm saying that a 13-year-old is dominating at the pro level in our sport. And that's hard to even just fathom, but she's an amazing talent. But how does that contribute to the growth of our sport and where it's headed?
Yeah, well, Anna Lee is certainly a special player, no doubt about that. A special young woman, very mature, gives back in her own way to the game as well. So I think she sets a great example for other very gifted athletes to want to come into the sport. I think certainly more visibility has to come around that. And so the work that folks are doing with growing youth pickleball, getting more pickleball into the schools, getting more pickleball into colleges to where kids could actually see a path to educational scholarships that then would be a path that led into being a professional player. I think that will bring more of the younger kids that are talented like Anna Lee into the sport. I mean, our sport's very blessed, certainly to have her and her mom both, and they've made a huge and positive impression for pickleball, and I'm sure more kids are coming in as a result. Some of the tennis facilities, are having kids play pickleball and tennis, just to start learning with eye-hand coordination. And then, I think if kids could see that there was a path in pickleball like there was in tennis, that more kids might go toward pickleball than off the tennis side. So maybe, but until then, you might have kids pickleball, go with tennis. Try to chase that tennis dream, and may find themselves back in pickleball while we're all out here continuing to grow for them and trying to pave a path.
Oh, I love it. And, that's one of the things too about pickleball that I think is kind of unique is that in tennis and other sports, you have the pro level and then you have recreational stuff that doesn't even it's just what you do on the side as a hobby. Where with pickleball, it's like a guy like Steve Deacon can come in his 40s and literally be a top contender in the sport. And that is unique to our sport. I haven't seen any other sport, and there may be some out there, but I just know like in the mainstream sports, you're going to be in your early 20s. The demographic is 18 to probably 25. And with our sport, you can literally be a world champion at 50 plus, 60 plus. The Hackenbergs are a great example of a husband and wife who've been around the sport a long time and have won multiple championships at their age group. How does that play into the continued growth of our sport, having those divisions and all that broken down?
Well, I mean, it certainly, helps. It's a lifelong sport, right? And we have seen a lot of players that have aged out of other sports, like tennis or golf or racquetball, and come into pickleball. And they'll tell you that they were maybe they were did very well in that professional sport. They've aged out of it, and now they're able to kind of get that second life, if you will, that second high school years of being able to come into another sport and be competing at those very top levels, which then feeds that fire, that competitive fire again, and keeps those competitive endorphins flowing. And then it's offered the opportunity for people who've achieved really good things in tennis, but just fell short of being one of the very top pros, be able to come into the game and be a very top level player. And I think that if we end up with some kind of path for more tennis professionals who don't make it into the very top ranks, come into the game, really change and impact our sport. Because 6 years ago when I came in, there weren't that many tennis players playing pickleball, right? I mean, literally. I mean, and Rodney Grubbs from Pickleball Rocks put this out not long ago. I mean, 6 years ago, the top two players in the world were Yoda Friedenberg and Pat Kane. These gentlemen were in their late 60s. And there were like 2 paddle manufacturers. Now there's like 70. I mean, and that's just in a 6-year time frame, right? So can you imagine another 6 years from now? And I do think we'll see an influx of more and more tennis players, and that's going to radically change our game. I think it's going to radically elevate our game and help us propel onto that national stage.
Along those lines, I have a funny story. I was doing the commentary at the World Pickleball Championships in Punta Gorda in December, and I was doing the first day of competition, which was pro singles. And there was a guy on the court. I'd never seen him before. He was a lefty named Pablo Tellez. And Pablo ended up losing the match that I was commentating, but he was competitive against a couple of the big I mean, throughout the whole tournament, he was competitive against some of the big names in our sport, even though he didn't come out on top. And we did some interviews, and I remember interviewing him, and I was blown away, Melissa, because I said, well, Pablo, I've actually never heard of you before now. How long have you been playing pickleball? And he looked right at me and he said, I think 3 weeks now. I've been playing about 3 weeks. And I thought, my gosh, I've been playing 3.5 years and I've never even been able to get on the court with these top guys. And I just thought that was one of those eye-opening moments to me that really expressed where we're headed with the sport, and that we are seeing some of those tennis players like you talked about coming in, and hopefully we can blaze a path for those players that couldn't quite get to that pro level in tennis, but see a direct path to maybe making some money and maybe doing pickleball full time in the future.
Well, you tell that story, it makes me think of a story back in Mesa in February. This guy shows up and he's playing singles tennis. His name was Martin Barber, and never heard of him before. He comes up to the desk a couple times. He didn't really understand anything about participating. It was, "This is my first time to play in a pickleball tournament. Help me, basically. What am I supposed to do?" And he, was put up against Paul Olin in the first round. No, we don't know who he is. Paul's like the top singles player on the 50-plus side, senior pro side today. This gentleman beats Paul in 3 games. And it's like, who is this guy? And come to find out, he's still playing professionally on the tennis tour, in the over 50s divisions. And so you just never know when these people are going to show up and want to try their hand at pickleball.
Absolutely. And that sparked somebody in me. There's a guy out of Florida on the East Coast, like in the Delray Beach area, named Mircha. And Mircha is a 50-plus player, and he's coming on the scene beating some of these guys. And people go, who are these players? And I'm thinking, wow, our sport is really progressing quickly, because these guys are coming on the scene and they're practicing a little outside of these tournaments, and all of a sudden they're beating some of the top names in the sport. And it's just really, we're seeing a very special time in our sport, because we're seeing it unfold right now in front of us. And I attribute it to the growth that tennis had back in the 60s and the 70s.
Yeah.
Even though pickleball has been around since 1965, I think it's been only in the last, maybe you could narrow it down even more than me, but I'd say in the last 10 years, it's really started to get some traction with social media and kind of a grassroots movement to push our sport to some of the more prominent social media aspects of it. So yeah, it's crazy.
It certainly is, and it's only going to get crazier. So it's going to be an exciting journey, and I'm anxious to get back to it. I mean, me personally, you talked about how things just kind of stopped on a dime, and the first opportunity it looks like I'm going to have to be back out at a tournament will be in August. So. And I've been home already since the middle of March. And so I've been learning my new normal, because, we talked about being a competitor, and I don't miss being on the court. I like to compete. But because, I'm at that tournament desk competing every single day to be better every single day, I get a chance to win a gold medal every time I'm at that tournament desk. And so, I'm certainly not going to get that opportunity for that gold medal every time I'm on the court.
I love it. Well, and I want to take this opportunity just to brag on you for a second, because I have played for 3.5 years, and I've traveled. Like I said, I've played upwards of 90+ tournaments in 3.5 years. So I've played literally 3 to 4 tournaments a month for the last few years, and I can tell you there's a big difference when there's a tournament run. And I'm not I should just say, like, I'm bragging on you, not knocking other tournaments that don't use your services. But when you've been at a tournament that I've been at, it's been run so smoothly that you see a distinct difference. And I think that's just a credit to you putting all your heart and soul and effort into making that a gold medal for you, making that gold medal run on the tournament side. And I just wanted to brag on you for a second there. I think it's incredibly obvious when you run a tournament across the country that it runs so smooth.
Well, I appreciate that. That means a lot, because I certainly take a lot of pride and put a lot of heart and soul to being the very best, that I can be, because I know that it has an impact on the experience of the players who are coming to that event. And so it's very important. It's important for the players, the volunteers, the directors, everybody that's involved in participating in an event. And so, that's why I was really kind of excited to have some of the time during this, unprecedented downtime to be able to start to share some of the knowledge and information with others, because I want everybody that shows up at a tournament to not know the difference if I'm there running it or not, right? That they're coming, they're having that type of experience, whether I'm behind that desk, managing the operations for the event. And so that's why I want to share out as much information. The certification program that was allowed, to get more reach to. I mean, back in the day, I used to be able to fly around the country and hit all of the major tournaments and help train people, on the site. As we've grown, I don't have the ability to do that. I'm still doing some of that, but I had to use technology to reach a broader base, and I hope it has an impact, and I hope it helps.
Absolutely. And I just want to clear this up live, because I have heard it said that Melissa McCurley does not sleep during the peak season of pickleball tournaments. Is that true? Do you not sleep during pickleball season when it's in full swing?
Well, so, I spent almost 20 years running global infrastructure operations for major companies that, during my time with EDS, I was, I was part of building the world's largest intranet, which still is today. And when there were, natural disasters that would come through and wipe out networks, or, people in the military, their lives were on the line. At American Express, if a card customer, couldn't swipe a transaction, they're looking at millions of dollars a minute. And so those things required me to sleep with one eye open. And, and because when you're in the operations and responsible for it, and especially when it's a global worldwide operation, it's always work time. And so, that's just carried on with me in pickleball. And because I'm still responsible for an operation, I got tournaments that are running all around the world. I just sleep with one eye open, Scott. But I'm still asleep. I'm still asleep.
So you're getting at least a little bit of sleep. Maybe not that rapid eye movement that they talk about, that deep sleep, but you definitely are a go-getter. I've always had a ton of respect for you because of your work ethic. And I know personally, I can't speak for everybody, but I've had questions at like 11:30 at night, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna just text her and see if she's still awake. And you get I'm not recommending that anybody do this, but there were important questions in my mind. And so, you've been awake at those times and just like gotten right back. And I've heard other stories as that as well. So that's why I wanted to clear up that myth that you don't sleep, because I feel like you're always available to answer questions as long as it's related to the pickleball tournaments and the tournament atmosphere. You want to make it the best experience for all the players, and that just really shines through. I'm serious. I'm not just bragging on you because you paid me or anything. She didn't pay me $1 to say that. She never gave me anything to say this. I'm saying from personal experience that Melissa has put her heart and soul into growing the sport of pickleball and doing everything in her power to make the experience the best experience it can be. And guys, she's invaluable to our sport. And I wanted to have Melissa on my show today because I think, number one, she is a great personality. I think for me, when I do these interviews, I think it's important to bring somebody like you onto my show so people that go to tournaments realize there's a real person behind all the madness, right? And that you really do care about the community of pickleball, but also it's great for them to get to see your shining personality. You're an amazing human being. It's just awesome to see.
Well, I've always said there would be a great show too if it was about capturing what happens with pickleball tournaments behind the scenes. I mean, it would be a constant mode of entertainment. I can certainly assure you on that. So
absolutely. And also, you and I talked off camera just briefly about how people ask you, how do you stay so relaxed and calm during tournaments? And you accredit that to your background working in the industry that you worked in and also being in the Navy, right?
Yeah. So, and it was what I was just talking about, to where, in the Navy, if there were issues and people's lives were at risk, at American Express, significant financials were at risk. And so when people ask me that, like, oh, how do you stay so calm and cool under pressure? It's like, well, this is pickleball. These are just brackets. I mean, no one's going to lose their life today, right? And so, but I do spend tons of time planning and preparing, trying to make sure that all the right things are in place so that an event does run smoothly, and we don't have to be in a stressful situation. So I like to keep things simple if I can, that's for sure.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And guys, I just want you guys to appreciate what we're doing here. I mean, Melissa is taking time out of her day to spend with you guys and to give you guys some insight and some background into the pickleball tournament software and what they're doing to advance the sport. And I have a feeling they're going to be around for a long, long time. And they've been crucial to our growth as a sport as a whole. But with that being said, we have had some faithful viewers that have been here since the start of this interview to now. It's an hour and 23 minutes in. I think we should reward these viewers with the opportunity to win a free paddle. Try to always have a sponsor that's going to give away a free paddle. And today is no exception. We're going to give away a Temper Oculus XT paddle. It's brand new. It's 8 ounces. Are you ready to do that, Melissa?
Oh, yeah, I'm ready. Shoot, we should have done that 20 minutes ago. Hey.
I know, but I like to make them sweat. I like to make them sweat a little bit.
Well, it's time. Let's do this.
Let's do it. So without further ado, I'm going to pop this question up. This is the trivia question. I do want to preface this, though. I have had some controversy, Melissa, over the last couple interviews with people thinking that they're the number one, like, first guess, okay? And I just want to clear this up for anybody that's watching and that's going to guess. I have the master list of first, second, third. You may think that you're the first person to guess this right, but I see the master list. So don't get upset or discouraged or mad at me or Melissa, because I ultimately have the final say, and I will show you guys later. I'm going to take screenshots for now because I had a little bit of a controversy of people thinking that they were going to be the one winning the paddle. So I do want to.
Can we just do this, Scott? You get a paddle. You get a paddle. You get a paddle. Everybody gets a paddle.
Unfortunately, I'm not Oprah Winfrey. I can't afford to give everybody a paddle.
Okay. Hey, guys, I tried.
If Melissa wants to give away 43 paddles, I am all about that. But without further holding out on everybody, here's the question. And this is Melissa's question. What paddle brand did Melissa McCurley play with when she first started playing tournaments back in 2012 or 14, whatever it was? Is it A, Onyx, B, PaddleTech, C, Pickleball Inc., or D, ProLite? So those are the 4 answers. And without fail, there will be a bunch of people answering right away. But I do think that when we wrap this interview up, I want you to just tell everybody how excited you are to see things get back on track. And you talked about August, the PPA tournament being your first tournament. Do you expect post-COVID that things will eventually get back to normal and everybody can kind of start getting back on track? And what time frame? I mean, do you think maybe nationals in November, can we expect things to maybe be back on track, or do you just not know?
Well, I think that we're all going to have to get used to a new normal. We're going to have to learn, to live with this virus. And we do that by being, safe, taking the proper precautions that we need to take when we're out in public. And, I think that as we do the things that we need to do, and we see how the virus responds to that and how we respond to the virus, every 30 days is going to be a kind of a new fluid situation to reassess. So I think there's just too many unknowns. But as the country starts to reopen and we see people try to get used to their new normal, as long as, that progresses well, then I do think that we will continue to see each month more and more events be able to be played. We just may not recognize those events like we did before because of the precautions that have to be taken, how many people need to be limited, coming into a venue. Certainly indoor venues will have to be treated much differently than outdoor venues. But at this time, from a nationals perspective, we are all planning and preparing to be at nationals and making sure that the people that are participating have a safe environment to do so.
Oh, I love it. I'm excited. I can't wait. I'm a tournament junkie. I absolutely love being at tournaments and competing, but just being a part of the atmosphere of tournaments in general. So even though it's going to be a new norm, I'll take it. I'll take it. I don't care if I have to wear gloves, wash my hands every 10 seconds. I'm gonna be at the first tournament that's going to be out there. So I'm excited to see you in August. I'm planning to be out there for that PPA tournament. Things could change for me, but as far as right now, I plan to be there. So looking forward to that. And without any more delay, I would like to announce the winner. And Melissa, do you know who Gene Click is from Oklahoma City? Do you know who he is?
I do not know Gene.
Okay, so I'm glad you said that, actually, because Gene is a guy who always tunes into all my interviews, and this guy is sharp as a tack. He wins 3/4 of the trivia questions. I don't know how he knows all this information, but he is really, really good at getting these correct.
Does he know which paddle, Pickleball Inc. paddle it was? He
may not, but we're gonna find out. I'm gonna ask him that and see if he can say that in the comments. If he knows that, then I'll bow down to that guy. But here's the thing: Gene Click somehow has done a great job of getting companies to send him free paddles and stuff to unbox. So he does this thing where he gets new companies mostly to send him free stuff, and then he unboxes it live for people to see. So this guy. Melissa, this guy has about 35 paddles already. So I don't even think this guy deserves the paddle that I'm going to give away. But I took a screenshot on my end. He was the first one to guess right. He guessed C, and that is the Legacy. That is by Pickleball Inc. And I want you to tell everybody why you played with that paddle back when you first started playing and why that was like the big paddle to use back then.
Yeah, and back then, a lot of top players were using it as well. I remember Alex Hamner was using it, Gigi LeMaster was using it, and for me, I mean, it was as big as a frying pan, at least it looked to me. So I mean, but on top of that, it just had a paddle that allowed me, just like it allowed me to have touch with the ball, but I could also wallop the heck out of the ball as well. And so it was just an all-around paddle for me, and being the size of a frying pan didn't hurt.
I love it. And for anybody watching, just a side note, what paddle do you choose to play with today in 2020? If you go out and play any rec games or even a tournament, what do you play with?
Yeah, I'm playing with the head paddle, and there's in fact, I hope to have, I'm playing with a head Pro Tour currently, but I'm going to be moving to a head gravity paddle coming next month.
Okay, head gravity paddle. You've heard it first here. Melissa McCurley playing with the head gravity paddle. I love it. Okay, I got one last thing that I want to do with you. It's pretty quick. It doesn't take long, but I do it with every person that I interview. It's called rapid fire questions. It has a lot to do with you and just your life. So you ready for that? We're going to pull you up here.
Let's go.
All right, here we go. I'm going to pull it up. And also congratulations to Gene Click, who won his 36th paddle. Geez, man, I don't even know what to say about that.
That's impressive.
It's impressive. He actually took a picture recently, Melissa. You need to go look it up. He's like sprawled out amongst his 35 or 40 paddles, whatever it is. And it's incredible. But,
maybe he needs to have his own paddle giveaway.
I think he does. I think he needs to start giving these paddles away. All right. But after the rapid fire, we're going to wrap the interview up because we're at an hour and a half, and I've taken enough of your time. But you've been so gracious to take this hour and 30 minutes out of your time. But let's go ahead and rapid fire question you. These are one-word answers, okay? So you just have to answer with one word.
Okay.
Favorite color?
Blue.
Favorite food?
Chicken.
All right. Favorite restaurant?
Any kind of Mexican food.
All right. Favorite hold on, I missed that one. How old are you?
50.
Woo, senior plus. I love it. Favorite shot in pickleball?
Oh, third shot drop, no doubt.
Okay. Who is your favorite pro player to watch?
Too many.
Too many. I like it. I like it. That's a great politically correct answer. I love it. I love it. All right. Your best shot in pickleball.
Oh, it's my third shot drop.
Okay. Your favorite shot, though.
Well, that is my favorite shot and my best one.
So it's the best and your favorite. Okay.
That's right.
I love it.
That's why it's my favorite.
I love it. All right. Your worst shot in pickleball.
My serve.
Oh, it's supposed to be one word. Elaborate just briefly on that. Why do you consider that your worst, the serve?
Because I have to serve with my backhand because I just can't control the serve by doing the normal underhand serve that you see most people do. And so it limits my ability to get any real power with my serve.
Okay. I love that answer. All right. 2 more questions. How would you describe your personality in one word?
Caring.
Ooh, that's a good one. I love it. How would you describe your pickleball game in one word?
Awesome.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. That's a great word. Actually, a couple more. I thought of a couple more here. What do you look for when you pick a pickleball partner? What is it that you look for the most in that partner?
Chemistry.
Ooh, I like it. Okay. I think that's it. I think that's all the ones, because the other ones are a lot deeper and we've already covered a bunch of that. So let me pull myself back up here. Melissa.
I'm starting to sweat. Thank God that's over. Is that why you call it rapid fire? I mean,
Yes.
People are sweating over here.
I can see that you're starting to sweat a little bit.
I am. It's like, dang, I'm going to turn my air on.
The golden boy hit you with some rapid fire and made you sweat a little. So
you did. Thought you were dragging back there, breathing fire.
I love it. She can run a tournament with 3,000 players, but asking rapid fire makes her sweat a little bit, get that sweaty palms.
That's right.
I love it. Well, listen, Melissa, you've been fantastic once again. I texted you to do this interview, and I knew you would be game for it. But I think it's so important for me to interview people like you who are so just instrumental in our sport and in the growth of our sport. So I just want to thank you once again for taking the time to do this. And I'm sure we'll have a third interview as well down the road.
Yeah. Well, Scott, thank you for taking the time. You do a great job doing these interviews. I enjoy watching the ones that you do with other folks as well. So thank you for the opportunity to be here with you today. I really do appreciate it.
You got it. Well, you enjoy the rest of your afternoon. And also, do you have any big plans for the Memorial Day weekend?
I will be shrimping and crabbing because that is something that is in abundance here in Hilton Head. So I'll be catching my own shrimp, my own crab, and eating fresh seafood all weekend. I
love it. And the one and last question before we go, do you plan on playing any pickleball this weekend on top of eating the shrimp and all that? I do not, but I'm sure I'll play some once this weekend is over. I love it. And guys, just as a reference, Hilton Head is a phenomenal pickleball place, a pickleball destination. If you're thinking about taking a vacation with your family or with your wife or whatever, husband, think about Hilton Head, because they built, I think, am I right, 24 courts dedicated? Yeah, 24 dedicated courts down at the Palmetto Dunes Pickleball Center, which is where Sarah Ansbury is the head pro there. And so there's daily round robins that go on there. There's daily doses of like clinics. There's lessons that you can do down there. And of course, then there's people that are out there in the afternoons doing open play as well. So if anyone comes to the area, look me up. I'd love to come down and meet you and play some pickleball with you. During this pandemic, I have been, once it was, they opened up the courts, what was it, last week? I was able to get back and play some pickleball. So was excited to be able to do that. And now too, for the first time, Scott, people have told me the first time in over 3 years that I don't look haggard. I don't look tired. I've actually had people tell me, Melissa, you look rested. So that's been nice. You were used to seeing, gosh, you look tired. Do you sleep? I know. I just got used to it. I'm like, yes, this is my normal look. Thank you. I love it. I love it. That is so awesome. Well, Melissa, thanks again. Enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. And I look forward to seeing you in August for the first tournament back. And you take care, okay? Oh, thank you. And thanks to all of our service members who have served and are still serving. Happy Memorial Day to everybody. Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Melissa. Right. Thanks, Scott. All right, guys, that was Melissa McCurley. What an amazing interview to have her on my guest show. I just I love spending time with Melissa. She's one of those people who is just a joy to be around. She's full of information and insight, and I hope you guys enjoyed the interview as well. I think Pickleball Central is actually going to repost this in their newsletter, so I look forward to having that put out there to the people who maybe missed this interview the first round. Also, please share this interview because I think this interview is the type of interview that has a lot of good information. We caught up with Melissa. We got to see what she was doing in her spare time, but we covered a lot of subjects, a lot of topics. And I think it's important to share this interview with people, not just to get, from my perspective, to get the views, but it's for the people who may wonder, is pickleball coming back? Is it going to be normal like before COVID-19? And Melissa clears a lot of that stuff up. Melissa is somebody who's just a big person in pickleball who has a lot of insight to the future of where we're headed with pickleball. She runs pickleballtournaments.com. She recently merged with Pickleball Central, and that's been a huge addition to their company. And I just think that, doing these type of interviews is important for our sport. She's given you guys just a lot of golden nuggets, a lot of insight to past, present, and future with pickleball. And I'm looking forward to catching up with her soon. And so I appreciate each and every one of you. Again, thanks to Gene Click for winning his 500th paddle. I'm just kidding, but he has won so many paddles and gotten so many paddles. It's amazing. But congratulations to Gene nonetheless. I don't know if Gene actually has a Temper Oculus XT already. If he doesn't have it, well, congratulations. If he does, I think he should give that paddle away to one of the people who is watching on this show. So, Gene, if you're still watching, I think you should give that paddle away if you already have one. And if you don't, I'm going to give you a pass and let you keep that one. But either way, you won that. So just send me your address, and I'll get that shipped out to you ASAP. Again, thanks to Melissa McCurley for her time. We're at 1 hour and 40 minutes, and so I'm going to end this thing right now. And you guys have a great Memorial Day weekend. We'll catch up soon. Thanks.